Okay, I think we are live on Facebook, and I am so excited to kick off the month of April with a little idea that I had. You know, we've had a phenomenal time hearing all from my friends and colleagues about how they got their start in singing and what brought them to music in the first place. And you know, the premise of the show is essentially to talk about the challenges and pitfalls and struggles that we have with vocal technique and what were some of those light bulb moments that helped us sort of realize, like, oh, wait a minute, when I do that, it's so much easier. And I thought, you know, who has helped me equally as much as any voice teacher are these amazing pianists and coaches that work with singers on a daily basis that have to navigate. I mean, well, this is what I want to get into, right? Like, I don't even know what you guys navigate, but all I know is that today I have with me here Rachelle Jonck, who for so long was my collaborative partner. We've done recitals together. In fact, I know you couldn't find yours, but
I'm very upset that I can't find
I
mine.
found our wild recital hall. I think this was my Carnegie Hall recital debut that we did with the Marilyn Horn Foundation.
We were so young.
We were so young, so young. But yeah, I mean, how many roles did we prepare? How many auditions did you play for me? It was unbelievable, the
A
number of
lot.
hours. A lot.
A lot.
And I loved that you you mentioned the other day, you were like, remember that time we had the perfect audition season where it seemed like every time that you played for me, it was like, oh, we'd like to offer you blah blah blah. And I was just like, okay, I want to have you in my pocket at all times. I still have that thought. I still always want you in my
I
pocket.
remember you saying that, and I remember after one of them that you got to offer again, like on the spot. You were like, nobody else can ever play my auditions. Like every time you play an audition, like I get a gig, and then we would go out for a drink and be like, yay, another audition, another role. It was just the dream season.
I know it was so amazing, and I remember one of those was in List Hall, I believe for the Spoleto USA Festival, and they were so like I remember them saying like, "Well, do you have anything in German?" And I was like, "Well, I have on Jagen's aria." And they're like, "That's not in German." I go, "Well, I know, but
It's
I mean,
amazing,
talk."
right? We remember all of those things like golfers remember their or each golf round. They can remember all the things that happened, even though it seems the same to other people.
Yeah,
It keeps on being different for us.
isn't that amazing? I mean, it's so true. That's another analogy of golf. I find that singing in general, technically, is so similar to swinging a golf club because, or probably a bat too. I was never good at baseball, but I wish hell I'm terrible at golf. But what I did realize is that if you walk up to the tee and you try to knock the living shit out of the ball, it's going to go about 10 feet, maybe, you know. But if you really focus on the technical aspects of the swing and you don't try to hit it as hard as you can, but rather allow the club head to do the work for you, all of a sudden you can hit it, you know, a good ways. And it's the same thing with singing. I just find that there's so many similarities between golf and singing, you know.
I can't remember if golf is not a game of perfect was part of my life yet.
Hmm.
Maybe I can't never remember when that book entered into my life, but it's like a Bible in my studio. Everybody reads it. It's by Bob Rotella, Rotella, and it's
And
called
what's the name of the what's it called?
Golf is not a game of perfect. It really is amazing. It's all about, it's cognitive psychology, and it's basically the inner game of tennis or the inner game of singing. It's completely opposite. I feel that those books are all, well, if you don't think about it and just like let it happen, then it will be perfect. But, or, you know, if you think about your left toe while skiing and not thinking about not falling over, then you won't fall over. And those things never kind of made sense to me because singers are way too smart and way too anal retentive to ever give over to that. So when I discovered golf is not a game of perfect, that was really amazing for me because that's really cognitive psychology and says that you can train your brain, you can teach your brain to think the right thing, and then your body, and then free your body in towards a response, right? So you can use your brain to set a good goal, and then you can free your body to reach that goal. And then you must remember golf is not a game of perfect. So even if you do all the right things, you don't always hit the perfect shot. And I think that
Right.
that it's a really amazing book. I totally suggest everybody to read it. And whenever I tell singers to read it, and they take down the name, and then 3 years later they're like, I finally read that book. I wish I read it 3 years earlier. So everybody who's watching right now, if you think this is your kind of thing, you should totally read. It's an easy read. It's also available like on Kindle and ebook and all
Oh,
of this.
yeah. Okay. Well, good. Good. We will definitely.
It will also help your golf. The next time we speak, you'll be a fantastic golfer.
There you go. There you go. Well, talk to us a little bit about how you got started in music. Growing up in South Africa, when did you first sort of get into music? What did you immediately, go to the keyboard? Is that what your natural path was, or how did that all get started?
Yeah, my mom was a music teacher and choir director, very good at her job. And I was always attracted to the piano in the house. More than that, I was attracted to the music scores. I was always like, I always wanted to read. So when I was 3, my mother drew like a music staff on like I think it was on the back of a church calendar. My father was the minister, so she had
Wow. Okay.
church calendars around to write like things on. And she taught me to read music. So I could actually read music before I could read words.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I cannot remember a time when I couldn't read music. I recently discovered that one of my students at Westminster Choir College was the same, also learned to read music very early on. So yeah, I was always drawn to that. I always loved sight reading. My mother always had the Mozart sonata sitting on, and I was very young, and of course, could only ever sight read it slowly. And I remember, I would play something in G major and like miss the F sharp, and my mother would scream from the kitchen, F sharp. I would go back and repeat. So yeah, I guess the piano and was always in my life. The interest in singers came way later. I first discovered song literature, I think, as many pianists do, like when I was at school. And I had friends who said, do you want to play for my voice lesson? And then the teacher was, oh, you're pretty good. You want to play for the recital? And so by the time I was a 3rd and 4th year student, I spent more time, I think, working on other people's recital than on mine. I don't think my piano teacher was very thrilled with this turn of events, but
Well, did you end up going to school to be like a piano performance major?
absolutely. I don't, what do you, when you're pretty good at playing the piano, and you're like, okay, I'm going to play the piano, right? And I guess it's like being a singer. People are like, well, how many people will actually be performing pianists? I remember that when I first went to school, there was a teacher who made us all stand up and say, make us sit down, like everybody who thinks that they're going to be performers. And, it was one of those like shock tactic things. And I remember him saying, well, only one of you will ever have. And I remember sitting there being like, yeah, it's going to be me. But it didn't turn out that I was a pianist as a pianist, but I did win. Like, if he's watching, sir, can tell you that I did end up having a career in music.
Well, what were some of the technical challenges that you were facing as a pianist? I mean, talk a little bit about, I don't know if you know, Lilia Sadlier. She did her doctorate at Indiana University when I was there as a graduate student, and her husband David and I sang together, and the 3 of us are on faculty. But she's really the only pianist that I've kind of had an opportunity to talk to a little bit. But I think it's exciting for me to hear like what sort of aspects go into playing technically, and what were some of the challenges or sort of struggles that you faced during your education as you were, striving to be a professional pianist?
I've been thinking actually a lot about it, because a lot of the work that I do currently has to do with like stepping back, helping singers step back and do exercises,
Right.
and not just repertoire, which of course for a pianist is a big part of training, right? Especially as a kid, you have to play all of your scales and your thirds and your sixths and your octaves, and I was well trained, I think, from an early age. But when I got to university, I had a real makeover in the winter vacation in South Africa, which is in June. If you studied with John Antoniadis, who is a fantastic Greek pianist, you had to spend, well, I don't know if it was all of us, but if he considered you good, you had to spend the winter vacation staying at school and having lessons basically every day.
Wow.
And he took that time to really teach what is known as weight shifting, which is a real, very specific technique. Claudio Arau played in this way. Like, famously, people will say, I studied with so, who studied with so. So Antoniades studied with Arau, who studied with someone whose name I can't remember, who studied with Liszt or something like that.
Sure.
It apparently goes back to Liszt, but let me tell you, I'm no Liszt. But I was taught that same idea of weight shifting, which is basically saying you don't just play with your fingers, but you play with the weight of the body, and that the weight flows from the back into the arm, and to keep all of the joints aligned. And then it kind of breaks down into rotation, circles, up and down, and I think, yeah, that's basically it. And so it's a really kind of like a system to kind of like break down the body to help the fingers play into the keys. And that was really revolutionary for me, and is the way I teach now. Every pianist I see, I'm always trying to get them into that. Sadly, from that, I think after that, I didn't practice enough because, I was more into Dichterliebe than continuing to practice. So like I feel like my pianist skills were going downhill as I was learning more and more about the voice. I worked in a couple of really, really good voice teachers' studios and spent hours and hours and learned so much there. And now, as I say, I'm really thinking about this idea of exercises and really breaking things down. So a lot of the work these days, especially during the pandemic, where I couldn't really coach repertoire, right? Nobody had any repertoire to sing for the longest time. Nobody had any money to coach. And it was also depressing. You'd be like, oh, I've always wanted to learn Tosca. Well, who wants to learn Tosca when everything has come to a grinding halt? It was depressing for singers. So I found that it was much more possible to get your head around just like singing some exercises. That wasn't such an emotional thing. And I don't know if this is a good time to talk about it, but I spent a lot of December and January, a lot of time during those 2 months, really studying old treatises, vocal treatises that I had spent time with before, but not really for this purpose. And to really look at the exercises that people were doing, like during the heyday of bel canto, and how different people use the same kinds of exercises. They broke it down in different ways. And I must say, I was really struck by that, and how little of that, in my experience, singers do these days. They warm up with their teachers mostly, and it tends to be, X number of exercises.
Well, see, this is the thing that, and of course, it's come much further, or quicker, I should say, to the surface now that I'm teaching. I mean, I'm still performing once that starts to open it back up and have all those possibilities and opportunities. But I was very fortunate that I was able to join the voice faculty at UMKC Conservatory, and I've got a wide array of students in my studio. Everything from an artist certificate student to incoming 18-year-old freshman performance majors. And it's interesting when you talk to young singers. There's no real deviation between what is warming up, what is a warm up, what is a vocal exercise. And I think that, the same way that like an Olympic athlete is going to stretch before they isolate their bicep workout or isolate the hamstrings or do, it's like I'm trying to encourage like the idea of warming up and stretching as one thing, and then vocal exercises to work specific agility or vowels or, whatever it might be. So yeah, I agree with you.
It's such an amazing thing, like when you get, and just getting the percentages better, and that's a lot. There's a lot we can talk about, the stress of the jury. This teacher has 13 voice lessons, and then they have to sing like 5 songs, and so like, and you have 1 hour a week. Like, what are you supposed to do? It's
I
like
know.
you take here, you take there, and you never kind of get down to what it is you really need to do to build, because you're always trying to get a kid to sing in 4 languages that they're not good at. And I feel that that system breeds a whole generations of singers who learn to sing in repertoire,
Right.
and therefore they have a lot of angst connected to that. If I have a dime for every person who says to me, "Oh my God, I wish I didn't sing Il mio tesoro when I was at school because I couldn't sing the coloratura, I couldn't negotiate the passaggio, and it was drilled, and I had to try and tweak it so many times to just get through a jury, and now I have to sing it on the Metropolitan Opera stage, and I still have that angst with me."
I know. I know.
Which I also think is interesting, because people often use that as a reason for not giving singers arias in school. But that's not really the point I'm trying to make, right? We just had this whole conversation somewhere else about how singers sang their debuts when they were 22, 23, 24 years old.
18 weeks. So Brian Email and I have another show that we do called The Listening Lab, and we were focusing on the Scotto di Stefano Lucia last week, and she made her debut at 18 years old as Violetta. It's
Right.
like when people and Rosa Poncel, right, 18, I think, or something like that. When these people were singing at that point, I mean, it was a completely different type of training, right? I mean, like what you were saying with your winter break lessons every day, being truly apprenticed by your teacher in a way that, I'm sorry, but a 50-minute lesson per week, there's, like you're saying, there's only so much we can do. And so I think all the more importance for those lessons to be structured in a way of like, here's how we do and what we do and why we do, so that there's no generic vagueness that's going on, you know what I mean, from the student's perspective.
I think it's so great that we really find that, clarify that balance, because I'm very against people being, well, you're too young to sing this. And, well, the point is really, you're too young to sing anything because you cannot really sing yet. So basically, it's just like, what repertoire will be least screwed up, because you have to learn to sing in your passaggio while singing a song instead of singing an exercise. And
Right.
that's what I like. I don't know, maybe Western, when we're old, we can like change all the curriculums of schools all over the world and bring back exercises into juries. Like people used to have, like the Paris Conservatory was looking at the Paris Conservatory handbooks that had all of these things that singers had to be able to do and had to prove that they could do, not in singing repertoire,
Right.
but
Right.
actually singing the exercises. And it's a pet project of mine. I don't know if the dear Lord will spare me long enough to see change in this field away from repertoire at kids instead
Yeah.
of like technical expertise.
No, I agree. I think that of course, you've got to at some point acquire repertoire in order to be able to go out and audition or go into the next level. But I think if that's the only thing that you're doing, you're missing it. You're building the house without realizing, well, wait, what quality of wood are we going to have? You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like you've got to make sure that you're doing. It's funny that you mentioned Il mio tesoro. So one of my master's students just wrote on here. He said UMKC shout out. So Hunter Eisenmenger is a current student of mine in his master's, first year master's vocal performance, and we are currently working on Il mio tesoro, and we are fleshing out the coloratura. But I will have you know that I have recently given him. Ooh, by the way, I need to send you that. I need to send him that page from the book that I'm using. But yeah, you've got to find some coloratura type agility exercises that you can work with different vowels, and then once you apply that to then it starts to make sense. But you're right, when you're just trying to fly through it in the moment, yeah, good luck with that.
It's so It's so sad, right? It's like sometimes I will record with singers, and it's like it's almost there's a highlighter around the parts that has always been hard and that has been taken apart and put together so many times that there's just nothing generic and flowing about it anymore.
Right, right.
So I really try to. I'm looking into. It's a new thing I want to do is to really have a program at Bel Canto Boot Camp that breaks arias down into skills.
So, in case anybody who's listening is unfamiliar with what Bel Canto Boot Camp is, talk a little bit about that.
So it started as my COVID project, and now it's my, I don't know, life's work, I guess, right? So it basically, the short version is that it started right at the beginning of COVID. My partner, Derek Goff, and I got together. Actually, he spoke to a singer whom we both know, and we had run a Vakai project like in 2017. Mm-hmm. And she was, oh, what a pity we don't have the Vakai project now, because here we are all sitting. And we were like, oh, what the hell, let's do it. So we started with the Vakai project, which was to be just a kind of like sing through the Vakai book. Mm-hmm. And as COVID continued, we just slowed ourselves down because we're like, we're going to be done with Vakai and COVID's still going to be here. So we have more time. So we started to slow ourselves down and we started to look at each lesson, really, what does it teach us in kind of the fullness of the Bel Canto tool set, right? If you get to the exercise about appoggiaturas, you can just sing the lesson about appoggiaturas, or you can pause a little and then dig into all of the research about the appoggiaturas. You can look at it in repertoire. So what does it teach you beyond? And so it got fleshed out into a 9-week program. It lasted 9 weeks the first time, all the way through the book. And people loved it and said, oh, well, surely you're going to do it in the summer, because by that point, everything was canceled in the summer. So we repeated it in the summer and we repeated it in the fall. So the program has run 3 times now, and it's pretty refined. And it now runs over 12 weeks because it's in fact too much material. People look at Vakai, you're like, oh, that's a simple book, everybody can sing it. Well, maybe you can sing the first 5 lessons, but it gets real hard, real quick. Yeah. So if you really want to study the whole method, we realized you need the 9 weeks of instruction and you need 3 weeks in between to kind of catch up, hone, find your bearings. Mm-hmm. So that is the gist of Bel Canto Boot Camp. Now it is an organization that Vakai Project is only one part of. We have all kinds of other things. We have listening salons as well on Sunday. This Sunday we are listening to Cavalleria Rusticana, the entire opera with different casts. Like, it's going to be the most amazing thing, like 7 santuzzas, 6 turidus. It's going to be really amazing. So we do all kinds of things, really trying to support the singing community, the teaching community. We have a book club. So we try to kind of do lots of things. And the most important thing for me now, which I say it has become my life's work, is that we made a area which we call the gym floor, because as you may know about me, I love me some kettlebell swinging. I love going to the gym. I love that. And not always. I've gone through periods in my life when I did not go to the gym so much, and these were not my mentally most healthy times, or physically, right? So I really believe in that. So it's called the gym floor. And on the gym floor, we really house all of these exercises that you can do, like just like when you go to a gym, you have a strength station and a mobility floor. And so the gym floor has that. It has exercises you can do for agility, registration, messa di voce, all of these things, all of these skills you need to have. And on the gym floor, there are historical exercises. They're kind of broken down. I try to comprise the historical exercises into smaller chunks because I think that's why people don't do the historical exercises, because it's pages and pages and pages of it. And people are just like, right, when am I going to sing all of that?
Right.
So we're condensing it. We're surrounding it with the historical exercises. And that stuff, I feel I've always had that in me, but I could never give it fully to singers who coach with me, for exactly the same reason the voice teacher cannot give the student everything, because an hour is only so long. And a professional singer cannot afford to pay my hourly rate. And I sit there to teach them all the know-how of the appoggiatura and say, well, this phrase is not good because the connection from this note to this note is not smooth. And it's that kind of detailed work that has ended up on the website. And I feel that my private coaching going forward is going to be so much more efficient, because people will be able to explore, read all of the historical stuff that, and people will also be able to read that and be like, it's not for me. And then they can save their first hour coaching with me and never even waste that hour. So it's really, right. It's an important thing in my life, because I feel that I can contribute more to our community. I can reach more people, and I can put more people in contact with each other. The community, it has a strong community aspect. Be there practice groups, so people will literally practice coloratura exercises together in Zoom and post. Can you imagine, right, when we were kids, that we can imagine that something like that would happen, that there'd be 20 singers posting portamento exercises and agility exercises and be like, oh, here's my chest head, like how I cannot get that transition smooth. And singers found that during COVID community, which they never had. It's like everybody's sola abbandonata in their little rooms, trying to get better and pretend that they're perfect in their auditions, and having so much sadness. So,
well, kudos to you for inspiring so many, because what you just explained sounds fantastic, and I need to make a note to sign up for that next time it starts around, because I think that would be amazing to do and refresh. I mean, that's just the thing. It's like you're saying, golf is not a game of perfect. Obviously, neither is singing, and like everyone always says, nobody wants to hear a perfectly sung performance. That would be robotic. It would be uninteresting. In fact, Chad Sloan said so many technical holes can be hidden by artistry, that you helped him this past fall in Bel Canto Boot Camp.
And I think that's that this whole idea of like, what is a technically perfect singing, for me, like if I have to say what I think is technically perfect singing, if I heard that, I would be in a puddle of tears of emotion, because it would be so, because I'm a professional musician, I know what that is. But I think that something that really is perfect is amazingly emotional. People, I think, equate this word perfect with every note is perfect and it is robotic. To me, it's like is the very last thing that in fact is perfect. To me, that's just, I don't know, I can't say shit.
Accurate, right? You can say whatever you want.
And yeah, I mean, like, I hate it when people were like, oh, that was so technically perfect, but I was so bored. I was like, that was not technically perfect. That was all non-legato, note by note singing without any line. There's nothing perfect about it.
Right. What would you say is some of those trends that you see lacking, missing with so many, let's say, young singers coming out of university or conservatory or whatever, that come to you and trying to get their professional career going? What are some of the things that you see that you're like, why are people no longer teaching, whatever it might be?
Well, it's dangerous ground, right?
Cheers.
Cheers. He said he was having bourbon. I said I only have rye, so we're having rye.
No, I went with rye. When you said rye, I went ahead and switched it up to my. Well, it's actually a bourbon and rye mix, but it's good.
Okay. Mine's Rittenhouse. It's really for Manhattan, but I didn't have time to mix a drink.
That's fine. You're totally. It's very classic.
What is it that's lacking? I'm trying to think about like one thing one overall thing, and then I can break it down. I
Yeah.
think that the overall thing that is lacking is the thing that singers are often told they have before they have it, and that is great technique. I think that singers leave school or go into the world being propped up as being made believe that they have all of the tools, and the fact that they fail are dependent on other things. They're not good enough actors. They are not slim enough. They don't wear the right clothes. They don't go to the right schools. They don't attend the right programs to make the right contacts. And I feel that diffuses the real question, which is like, am I really technically equipped to do this job? I know many singers who sing at a high level who behind closed doors will say, sometimes I feel like a fraud and I'm afraid somebody will find me out.
I have heard those very words. I don't know how many times.
So many times. And I think that is, again, golf is not a game of perfect. We do singers a disservice if we say, well, you have all the tools. Like, you have all the tools. You have to just have more imagination. Go to a coach, get more ideas. I always say, like, if somebody tells you that you're singing without imagination, you don't need another thought in your head. You need technique, because what is in your head is not coming out of your mouth.
Right.
And that, I think, and then if I have to break that down and say, what are the technical aspects that are not taught enough? That's pretty easy for me, because these are the things that I ask singers, and I hear, I have been told that this must improve, but nobody has told me why. The first one is legato.
Okay, perfect. That leads into
Every day I hear that. I hear all the time, I must improve my legato, but nobody ever told me how.
So how would you define, or how would you help a singer understand how to better their legato line? What is legato in the first place? How do you talk about that?
The first thing singers have to understand is that many people who talk to them about legato, like conductors, for example, are not singers.
Right.
And people talk about legato in terms of the instruments they play. If you're a pianist, you understand how to achieve legato in a specific way, right? You play finger legato, or you put the pedal down. If you play violin, you can put a slide, or you do string crossing. Legato is the name of the game in music. Without legato, there is no music, right? The default articulation is legato, and everything else is deviations from that for whatever reason. I'm going to sing marcato, staccato for an effect, but legato is not an effect.
It should be the building block, the thing you start with.
The default.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is the first thing. You cannot have a pianist kind of intoning about what they think legato is and how you should achieve it, because they don't know. Legato is the goal, is the musical goal. How a singer sings it is the word that people are just afraid of, and that is portamento. I don't know why people are so afraid of the word portamento, because that is just what Italians call when the one note is carried from the previous one. Portare la voce, carry the voice from note to note.
Yeah.
And that event is called portamento. So singers have got to dirty up their minds a little and you cannot sing perfect notes that are not in fact bound together with the breath and imagine legato. You must sing legato with your instrument. It is not a musical effect. For a singer, it is not. For a pianist, it is a musical effect, because you cannot actually play, because this is a C and this is a G. It's two notes. They are not bound together, except for with the audience's ear. The instrument cannot bind them together. So I die on that cross every day of my life. Voice science, I have voice science behind me. If the chords are going to go from position A to position B, it has to go through all of the positions in between.
Yeah.
There's no frets, there's no keys, you can't put your fingers on the fingerboard. The vocal cords work like that, right? Like sometimes I tell my singers, we sing intervals, we don't sing pitches. That's one of the mantras in my studio, right? We don't learn pitches. We're always learning intervals because that's how it makes sense in the voice. How exactly that breaks down, how much of that portamento you hear depends on how fast that portamento happens in the throat, where I sing and really like carry it really faster, but it's never it's never this kind of like yodel effect.
Right.
With like, a look of legato on your face.
What does legato look like?
You cannot like act legato with your face and sing non-legato with your throat and think you're going to fool me, right?
It's true. Well, to that point, I can't tell you the number of singers that I've said, okay, just do that again, but give yourself permission to feel like the articulation is messy. You know what I mean? Like, don't feel in your throat, ha 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 ha. It's like but I think that there is this sort of like misplaced accidental accuracy that no, the pianist will say, no, listen to it again, and then they'll play it, and then the singer goes, oh, that's what it should sound like or feel like, and they've lost it.
The best thing a singer can do is to step away from the keyboard. Even if you're a fantastic pianist, you're probably not going to play a good musical line when you plonk out your notes. And you trying to sound like, like it's deep in our ears that instrument, the sound dissipates. My mother said was a choir teacher of very small kids, and some of them had never heard a piano. And so when she tested kids for choir, I always find an amazing story. They would have trouble matching pitch with the piano because they don't know the sound. Mm-hmm. So she would say, I'm going to sing something, and then you make the same sound. So she would sing, la, and the kid would go, la, and she would do this a couple of times. And she'd be like, we're going to do the same with the piano. You're going to make a sound on the piano, and you just make that same sound. And she would play the note on the piano, and the kid would go some version of, dum.
Right.
So if somebody who does not know the piano tries to imitate the sound of the piano, the sound disappears immediately. And so many singers sing like that, with all emotion in the attack, but no emotion in the sustenance of the tone, which is the thing that leads to the next note, the tone that must continue, right? If I'm going to sing from A to B on the vowel A, I can't get from A to B without going through the stuff between A and B. That's just voice science. It's just how the Lord made the instrument. There's nothing you can be upset about it, but you can't change it.
Well, again, and I think that we go through these keyboard harmony classes and ear training classes, everything based on the piano. And so we learn that there is an A and then a B flat and then a B, but we don't think about the quarter tones or semitones in between those notes. It wasn't for me until I had this opportunity. There's a brilliant composer, John Eaton, up in Chicago, who composes purposefully with two keyboards. There's one that's in front of him, and then there's another one to the left of him, and the one to the left is tuned purposefully a half step down from the one in front of him, and he uses all the keys as one instrument. And so you can, when you listen, and I was in his studio watching him play this piece, and it's like you start to hear quarter tones as these like significant intervals. And it's so, if you haven't had that experience of hearing so clearly the note in between the notes, it's hard to imagine like, oh, okay, so if I'm gonna like what is if I were to push pause in that moment, like what note is that? It's like, well, there's lots of notes in between a huge half step or a whole step,
Right. Mathematics will tell us infinite notes, right? If it wasn't for that, you wouldn't be able to sing out of tune, because you're not just going to go a half tone down.
Exactly.
They do know where it is. They can just not find it when they have to, right?
Right.
Yeah, this whole business of like teaching harmony, counterpoint, and all of that stuff, all based on the keyboard. Another thing, like, we are in 2021, for God's sake. How can we not start to think about it in different ways? Before there was a keyboard, all musicianship was taught to the voice, right? Musicians were singers before there were instruments. And then when instruments arrived, then now all of a sudden, singers have to be trained in all the parts of the musical world that they have to understand. History, singers have to sit through hours and classes of symphonies and stuff. And, they maybe have a little opera class on the side. So many things that can be taught to a singer. I would love to teach singers harmony because, then they would be able to write their cadenzas and they'd be able to write ornaments. If you taught a 20-year-old singer harmony and counterpoint based on how they can use it to sing their Handel arias and how to adjust their bel canto cadenzas, they wouldn't be asleep. But they're only taught that on Bach well-tempered clavier, which I love as a pianist. But sure. It's a really screwed up world in which singers have to do all of these things, all of these skills outside even of just singing, language, ornamentation, all of these things. And then they have to learn those things in a kind of disjunct way that is not connected to their field. So many things we have to fix, Weston.
There we go. Well, hey, listen, it starts right here, right?
It starts right here.
That's good. I remember working early on with you, and I just thought you had a secret that just I did not know, and you would numerous secrets. I mean, the way that you played made it feel like I was singing with an 80-piece symphony. The way that you would inspire in my singing and everyone that works with you a sense of musicianship and legato and connection. But when it came time, you mentioned the ornamentation or the cadenzas and Handel, I would just look at you and be like, what do I do here? Like, just, I had no idea. And you're like, oh, well, you could do this or that, something like this. And I was just like, it's like a kid watching a magician make a rabbit disappear or appear out of a hat or what, it's just like, how do you do that? Because you're right. That is an entire skill set that as singers, we don't even, or at least, I think the majority of us don't even have a clue about,
It's really amazing. And it is just like a magician's trick. If you're, I don't know how a rabbit appear out of a hat, but I know it's a simple trick, right? All of the basics of a great trick is that it's simple. Ornamentation is exactly the same thing. All somebody has to do is employ somebody at a school to teach counterpoint who knows about opera and the skills that the singer has. Because we just completed an ornamentation course at Bel Canto Boot Camp that was all based, in fact, on the intervals of Akai. So we went through ornamenting all of the lessons of Akai, because then you can ornament each interval. And if you learn that the basic building blocks of ornamentation, you're already learning Bakai, turns, mordents, scales or passing notes or whatever, and the inversions of those things. It literally is just like Lego blocks. And all you need to learn is how to put them together. And you don't have to be an amazing musician to do that. You have to just be taught how to do it. Somebody has to just break it down for you. And again, this is why I say I'm so thrilled that I found this online world, because I can teach hundreds of people that at the same time. And then you can just sit in your own room at your own time and be like, okay, I can do this exercise. Write ornamentation for this simple line using these building blocks. It's even color coded. It's fun. It's like a game. I would love for singers to be able to be the masters of their craft again. I think that's such a big topic in our world, right? Yeah. Like autonomy, being respected, being the master of yourself. And in our field, so much talk about that, right? Singers being respected by conductors, by directors, their ideas being respected. But if we don't train our singers well, If our singers do not have the same detailed training in order to be the masters of their own roles, then we are not making for a future that is going to be successful. To just say, okay, singers, go ahead. You are the master of your own role, but your legato is lacking. You cannot ornament your own aria.
Right.
And that is I feel that is something we have to be really honest with ourselves, that from a true perspective of history, the singer must be the most important person in the opera house. In the time of when Verdi's Requiem was performed for the first time, the soprano was paid more than anyone, including the conductor.
Wow.
He made the biggest fee because she was the most important person. We have to find a way to put our craft back in that place where people who sing are the people who bring the art to our stages. But those people must be educated to lead and not to follow. We teach our kids in freshman and sophomore years, do as you're told. If your teacher says this, but then you're in the scenes program and you're told, that is how you learn to be a professional singer, because a professional singer must be able to do what anybody wants, right or right? That's literally, we are telling ourselves, I'm a successful singer because, I can finagle my way and kind of basically do what everybody wants and like bring a little bit of myself. I can sneak a little bit of myself in there while pretending that I'm doing what everybody wants. That narrative we've got to change. But that means we must train singers with strong opinions, strong historic backgrounds, strong musicianship skills. And it's not okay for us to say, well, they're not good musicians because, they're singers. No, you know why they're not good musicians? That's the other thing I hate. They are not at the same level of musicianship because they did not learn how to sing when they were 3, for God's sake. I learned to read music as a pianist because there was a piano in my house. A singer cannot learn to sing when they're 3. Their vocal cords are this big.
Right.
You have to go all the way into puberty. Then if you're in the modern world, puberty, that's like that whole part of your life is just lost from a professional perspective because, you're a mess of hormones and stuff. And then eventually you're like, I'm going to be a singer. And so by the time you step into conservatory, you're already 15 years behind the pianists in the
pianist, the violinist,
right. And like, what do we achieve by just looking down on singers? We're like, no, have respect. These people bought their first violin, piano, oboe when they were basically 16, 17, 18 years old. And we need to make it possible for them to, in a concise, organized way, learn the skills that they have, save them from the skills they don't have. This whole idea of like, well, in order to be a well-rounded musician, you have to have all of these things. Singers don't have time. That's why they can't debut before they're 45.
Right.
Because they have to learn so many. Yes, in the perfect world, they know all of Shakespeare. They know, they have lived in Italy, France, and Germany for 4 years each. There is a utopia. But in the meantime, we need to get practical about what we need to give our singers for them to be the powerhouses in our industry that we sorely need.
I want to hire you to be the leader of all vocal instruction and education for the world. That I love everything that you just said. In fact, we've got some Danny Mobb says hi West and hi Rachelle.
Hi Danny.
You know what's funny? When we did, in fact, I was teaching a lesson today to a baritone working on A per sempre, and when Danny and we sang the Puritani with Sumi Joe and Barry Banks there at Caramore with Will and you. I remember that Daniel said about my singing, he said something like, "You just sound so sweet. We're going to have to do something about that." And at the time, of course, I mean, I was all of this was like, what was that, 2005 or something? I was just sort of crux of like leaving young artist land. And really, it wasn't on my radar of like how the human voice and the scope of sound can be purposefully altered while maintaining the integrity of the vowel to achieve a different type of resonance. And I feel like that in itself, I mean, I don't know. I hope that everyone who's watching is following what I'm saying, but it's like so often we're just told to sing in tune, or to just sing the notes on the page, or to just tell the story that this piece is telling. But yeah, I always remembered that because I thought he just thinks that I sound sweet. He doesn't think that I can sound like. I hope that Dan's still listening.
Well, I mean, I have to say, like, in everybody's defense, like that voice, and I'm sure still is, even though I haven't heard it, it's just so beautiful, right? Like, it's the sound is so beautiful. But what you're saying about that scope again is right. So here I go, we just made a sheet at Belcanto Bootcamp, which is like how to be the MVP of the MDV. How do you get to be the best at singing Messa di Voce?
Messa di Voce, okay.
There you go, the MVP of the MDV. We're always trying to make a little fun, a little, because I believe we get good when we have fun, and when we're playful, and when we are nice to ourselves, and we
Absolutely.
are our colleagues. But there you have, how many singers go weeks, months, years without ever singing Messa di Voce, which is the classic exercise in which you discover all of your colors, right? So they just, this is my other pet hate, people practicing and having voice lessons in one dynamic. From exercises into, it's like, let's just get that voice like lined up and ready to go. It's what I call like voice studio dynamic. When everything is like, the air pressure is just right, the vowel is just right, everything is just right. That is like dynamic X. And they're just like, the student goes and like, let me just find X. And everybody's like driving X. Then they're like, now go to your coach and, like become musical. Well, you are only training one dynamic. So you don't know. So now your other dynamics become whispering, crooning off the voice, or
right.
shouting, Sprechstimming. So now your scope goes from whisper, dynamic X, and shouting. While as if you did Messa di Voce every day of your life, you would have the whole palette of colors to pick from. Dynamics is not a coach's job. It is all of our jobs to inspire singers to explore dynamics within the range of what is called beautiful singing, right? I am not one to hear Puritani made into like Schönberg.
No.
There is no Sprechstimme in Puritani. Don't start speaking at me and shouting at me, and don't make ugly sounds. That's the other thing, right? At the moment, everybody's into ugly. Well, it can be ugly. No, it can be a sound that carries the meaning of the text, that can have all kinds of grit and stuff, but the word ugly does not have to come into it.
I hear you. Yeah, I think, that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. I mean, talking about the dynamic thing in voice lessons, one of the favorite quotes of my current teacher, Stephen King, who is retiring from Rice University this semester.
Yes, I heard that.
He says, well, soft singing is just like loud singing, except it's different. I'm like, wait, what? But the idea that you do not come off the voice and you do not croon when you sing softly, but in fact that it is connected, engaged, and perhaps even more intense, more energized, let's say, than what loud singing is. I think that in my teaching, I certainly encourage initially for everyone to find a free tone with an idea of mezzo forte plus, so that they're not trying to manipulate the sound or the vowel or something, but to find the freedom in thinking that. And then when we go into something that's piano or pianissimo, it's a matter of how do you take and maintain that freedom through whatever dynamic that you're doing, so that, again, like you're saying, that you are in control of what it is that you're doing purposefully without ever getting off the body, getting off the voice. And I think that right there with this Messa di Voce exercise that you're talking about, that in my mind is what perfect technique is. Being able to do a Messa di Voce throughout your entire range.
Right. So here I have my tried and true way to really improve dynamic X is to find your messa di voce from it. So if any singers are interested in playing at it, start at the dynamic where you are comfortable. Then take it down, but only one notch. I think the problem is people always try to find the softest and the loudest.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you have no control of what I call the mid dynamics. You have no color variation there where you have to sing all of Ach ich feels, or Anon Credea is mostly in this kind of mezzo, but you don't have any gradation there. So play around X and then push the boundaries from there. Here's another little mind game for everybody. Every treatise that talks about the messa di voce in some way says that is an exercise of registration. So play a little with this, like in your practice, with this idea that all notes, I mean, we all believe this, all notes are a blend of head and chest, right?
Sure.
Like it's a blend of that stuff.
Some percentage of the other, yeah.
Right. And the soft, right, in men, it's always head dominant, but with like head resonance in there, whatever. But from a basic perspective, the softer a sound, the more head resonance, and the louder, the more chest resonance. So that is like a balance that you're playing in messa di voce of registration. So I find that very useful because I remember I've asked singers literally sing at the Metropolitan Opera. So when they come in and they say, I do this when I travel to schools as well. I'm like, so how do you sing louder? And they go, breath. I'm like, okay, what? It can't just be the same, right? Because if you want to get loud, like more breath, and they're like, yes, more breath. I was like, okay, so to sing softer, less breath. Then they go, I don't think that's right. Like, so it's kind of amazing. Like if you do a poll with like really from professional singers to students, and you're like, well, how do you sing louder and softer? They're like, well, it's something that I know I'm supposed to do, but I don't actually know how. Well, get yourself to messa di voce, get your head around the balance of chest and head registration. If you don't know how to adjust that balance, talk to your teacher and figure out how to play that seesaw of chest and head. Sometimes we call it like a pony. There's, that's in the playground, the dynamic, we call it the dynamic pony that kind of goes between the chest and the head. And try to get specific about how you find colors in your voice beyond it's a feeling, because, it's a feeling is not going to get you through Metropolitan opening night when you realize you've only been singing one dynamic and you're going to get crucified. Oops. Because you're just, also not, people sing in one dynamic all the time and people think it's great, which annoys me that we don't have these colors. But yeah, that's a big one. Really exploring that so that you don't have to resort to whispering and ugly singing.
Well, yeah. I mean, nobody wants that.
No, I certainly don't.
Ugly whispered Sprechstimme. We combining.
Now let's leave that. Let's leave that for
that.
some other people.
There's a lot of good stuff in here. So when you, I don't know, look forward to what's to come, I mean, you are continuing to do the Bel Canto boot camp on Zoom. But then I'm getting my second vaccine tomorrow, which I'm excited about. Yeah. So people are, it's starting to happen. I see people on Facebook all the time they got their second shot, and I really sincerely hope that this is a mere corner that we're rounding to being able to freely be in person together to make music.
I just today had 2 in-person coachings. I'm fully vaccinated.
Good.
And my singers who are fully vaccinated are coming back, still with breaks in between. Of course, like I've missed that. I've missed my in-person studio terribly. And I hugged the shit out of those 2 mezzos who came in the studio today. Also amazing, right? My studio started back up with 2 mezzos and not 2 sopranos. How wild is that?
How funny is that?
I'm looking forward to it. I hope that a lot of my in-person singers will join my online community as well. That's one thing, you know, like in the beginning, I thought, oh, my regular singers are going to be all over this because it will be a way for us. But I think that it was sad. It was sad
Well,
for them, right? They're used to having me to themselves. And
right. Well, for a number of things. I mean, I think, I certainly felt it when you get everything taken out from under you. So like you were planning on a certain income, and then to see those fees disappear, and because there was so much, confusion about force majeure and, well, do we need to pay anything? I mean, I can't count the number of companies that paid nothing, and it makes you look at the ones that did do a 25% payout or whatever, all
there
the
is.
better. But I mean, still, it's like there was a significant sadness, and like there was a time where I was just like, I have no desire to open a book and turn my keyboard on. It just wasn't anything on the book. So, but I imagine the younger singers, or perhaps people who, I don't know, didn't have all their singing work taken away from them, who were kind of in the process of learning anyway, that they were perhaps a bit more gung ho about participating. I don't know.
Dude, let me tell you, I just should be come out and say, just because by nature I'm a problem solver, right, which is a good thing for a coach to be. By
Sure.
nature, I'm a problem solver, and by profession, I am the person who has to say, okay, here's an idea, right? Because when you see us, that's my job, right? When a singer, I'm frustrated, I don't know how to like, I am a problem solver. I always have plan A, B, C, and D. And so it was natural for me to look for solutions during
Hmm.
COVID, but that did not prevent me from walking around my apartment weeping uncontrollably, sitting like as late as October last year on my bathroom floor, crying for 3 hours and not being able to leave because I was so sad.
I know.
And so, I don't want anyone to think that COVID has just been like, oh, this is great, we can do. No, there is a lot of sadness and loss in all of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as my friend Derek always says, the one gift of this really for us was time. And I was very adamant with myself that I should use that time as good as I can. So the times when I was not crying and lying on the bathroom floor, I tried to come up with solutions, and I hope that some of the solutions that no, I don't hope. I know that the solutions that I found essentially has nothing to do with COVID. It has to do with democratizing, making information available to many more people for much less money because we all contribute together. And I think that that is a problem that existed pre-COVID. And
Absolutely.
I am attached to the idea of saying, coming out of this, I'm not like, how do I go back to my normal life? How do I go back to a better life? How do I solve problems? And I think, we are in that politically, from a racial perspective, our country has to, surely we have to, as thinking people, have looked at this time that we got with terrible loss, terrible sacrifice, and say, we have got to do something better. Our opera houses must be better. We must be more inclusive. We must look at the power structures that we have in our schools, in our profession. We have to look at that. We have to be honest with ourselves. And we have to say, as hard and painful as our lessons were, we learned them and we learned them well.
Beautifully put. Absolutely beautifully put. I mean, I couldn't have said it. No, I don't think anybody could have said it better. I think, and when we start to sort of look around, I do see numerous organizations doing better, and it's exciting to watch. It really, really is. As things slowly start to open up and seasons start to get announced, it's like, oh, wow, look at there. That's a really interesting, diverse season that incorporates something so different than what would have been done 2 years ago. You
Yeah.
know, And I think that plays into what you're saying. Ash- Ashraf says, "Okay, I'm in love."
Well, Ashraf, if you're a singer, I am by definition in love as well. Never met a
Exactly.
singer I didn't love. Never met a
Exactly.
singer I didn't love. Never met a voice I didn't love, right? Because that's so amazing, right? That they're all different.
Yeah, it's so different. It's so
And
unique, and yet
yeah,
we all need your help. And so that's what we have in common is that every once in a while you find someone who is able to tap into, that missing link and to help bridge the gap. And I think that's what I wanted to try to highlight this month. And you have done so beautifully today in explaining your take on this and how you work with singers. And it's just I wish I could have a coaching with you right now. I miss you so much. I love you.
I miss you too. I'm going to maybe somewhere halfway close to you in May. So
Well, I will be around in May, so that would
I
be
think that
amazing.
what I really want to do is like a bel canto boot camp trip all around the country and go and to meet all the people that I've met online. How
That's
cool.
incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, that would be so great. Carlos Arco says that they love you.
Oh, Carlos. Oh, talk about like gorgeous young baritone voice. Just like really, Carlos, I will not tell them how young you are, but very young. And when I hear singers that are that young and you hear them like really reveal the full beauty of, you feel like you're the first person who sees that diamond, right? And
Right.
it's so amazing. So at first you just think this is incredible. Nobody has ever heard this. Like surely has never sung a beautiful note like that anywhere else, except for here in my
Except
stereo,
for me, yeah.
except for me, just for me. And then secondly, you think, man, if I could help him get all of the notes to sound like that, then superstar.
There
And
you
I kind
go.
of feel that about every voice in a
Well,
way.
that yeah, like and rightfully so. I mean, everybody possesses the ability to learn to sing technically proficient and find this, you know, it's like I explained it the other day. I was like, it's like breaking a code. It's like a code, and if you can unlock the code, then it's like everything reveals itself, and you're like, oh, well, I had no idea that I was supposed, Now there's a lot of umbrellas that code can fall under, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's it's multi I think of it also like a big recipe, right? And if you're using the best ingredients to create this recipe, yeah, it's going to taste good, it's going to sound good.
It's going to taste good. It's going to sound good. It's and as you bake that bread, right? Everybody was baking bread during COVID, right?
Yeah, 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 that was the thing.
They've never made coffee before, but then they're making bread. They go to restaurants like for every meal, but then all of a sudden everyone's like making their own like starter to make sourdough bread. But I think people were having fun doing that.
Yeah,
And people were doing the same thing over and over again, right? And getting better and better at it. And every cook will tell you that you can make a recipe once and then be like, well, I can't do this. You have to keep doing it and you keep learning. And I think that for singers, it has to be that singers have to throw the trauma of having to be perfect off and say, I am ready to discover a process that is fun and a positive thing in my life that does not break me down. We
yeah,
didn't even talk really about like but it's a big thing, I think, that singers are traumatized by the weight they feel of what they have to fix themselves that they don't know how to fix, and this facade of having to be perfect. And I really want our generation, me and you, us, like, I don't know, we're middle aged, right? Almost, or something
well,
like
it
that.
depends on yeah, it depends on what the
Well,
expiration date is, I guess, but
I mean,
right.
we've been out of school for a while, so we're the previous generation. I
Yeah,
think really it's our generation's job to help younger singers and musicians find joy find joy in making music, in getting better, and truly finding ways to support each other. It's one of the most beautiful things that Belcanto Bootcamp has taught me in the practice groups, because people get to know each other very well. Sometimes in practice groups, somebody will be like, I haven't posted any videos in a while because I'm just in a slump. Like this week has just been hard. You see that person come back to that group and write a comment on somebody else's video and like, oh my God, you sound so much better. That Messery Voce is so much better than it was last week. And they do that for 3 days. They support other people and there they go, right? And
Wow.
they're like, okay, if so-and-so could like get better, and then sometimes they talk at the camera. It's amazing. They're like, oh my God, I don't know. Today is just hard, but I'm going to try and sing this agility exercise. And they find being not only good to others, but being good to themselves through that process, which is a cool thing for us to find.
It is a cool thing. And I don't know if you think about this, but we think about this all the time. I joke at the beginning of this interview saying that I wish I could always just carry you around in my pocket. And in a sense we do, because I kid you not, today when well, here, I'll show you. I'll show everybody. So here I had a baritone that was working on Opera Sempre. So here's my trusty Puritani score. And as we were sort of walking through the aria, I said, "By the way, have you looked at the cabaletta, the Bel Sogno Beato?" No, no. Should I look at that? I'm like, well, I mean, if it's a pretty cool competition type of offering if you wanted to do the recit, aria, and cabaletta. But I mean, whose handwriting is that? You're right here. You're right here. Maybe not in my pocket, but certainly on my shelf. And as I was looking at this, I was like, oh yeah, that's that time that you were like, how can we incorporate a high G into the the I was just like, God, Rachelle, okay, I'll try it.
It's like, man, is your G still as good, Weston?
It's better. I
Oh
have never
my
listen to
God,
this.
dude.
I have never sung better than I sing right now, and I think that you nailed it when you were saying that your partner Derek had mentioned what COVID gave us was time. For me, it was not only time to spend with my family, right, to be around my wife and daughter, and to reconnect and to remember what it's like to be under the same roof for longer than a month or whatever it is, But it was also an opportunity to sit at the keyboard and be like, okay, let's get back to basics. Let's start to really focus technically, because you do get wrapped up at the end of the day and like, okay, what's the next role I'm doing? What's the next role? And so like you were saying, it's like repertoire, repertoire, repertoire. Now, hopefully at some point you've built the technique underneath over time. But my gosh, it was so refreshing for me to just go back and focus on doing vocalizes and realizing, oh yeah, what's causing that issue? Oh, okay. And the thing that we've all sort of learned to do was to have lessons via Zoom and to have time to be able to do that. And I cannot tell you how much that helped in my growth, as a singer, even more so. So yeah, I mean,
That's
yeah.
also something I fought. When Skype, remember when Skype
Oh,
came?
of
And
course.
my singers would go off to Europe and be like, do you do Skype coachings? Can I Skype? Like, I really feel like if I could just see you. And I'd be like, nah, I don't do that. I just always dismissed it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I kind of wish, like, I was like, why was I so, I'm a free thinking person. Why was I so stuck? Why was I so stuck that I couldn't? Now I freely do when singers want to work online, because I've learned how to do it effectively without being frustrated by the things that I cannot do, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
learned
yeah.
how to use the technology for good and like ignore it for the rest, right? I think
Right.
that that's the trick. I am not one to perform like with tracks, and that's not for me. So I've avoided that. I don't want to do that, because for me, the beauty of making music is to make it together and to feel each other breathe. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
want to
I mean,
like,
I'm simultaneously very thankful for the folks like at App Componist who have done so
of
much work in
course, of
recording.
course.
But at the same time, there'll be a track and whoever's playing it, I'm like, what is happening right now? I mean, like, it's unreal to hear some of the deviation in tempi from like what they consider to be 100%, which is like this should be correct, right? And then you can, thankfully, you can adjust it up and down. But
Right.
my
No,
God,
so I think it's, yeah, I think that's really, you know, it's amazing, but it's how life is, right? Terrible things happen to teach you big, important lessons.
absolutely, absolutely,
So here we are, a little older, a little wiser, yet
right.
older yet, and thankfully finally wiser.
Wiser. But I mean, would you? Let's say this. I mean, are you? Have there been a different time in your life where you've been a better coach than right now?
No, but I will be a better one yet tomorrow.
Exactly. Exactly. That's
People
how I
ask
still
me that a
feel.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way about my singing and also about my teaching. I mean, I feel like for me, obviously, one of the things that have come out of COVID is this Under the Hood series where I've had an opportunity to talk with friends and colleagues and musicians about their process and what what they hate and what they love and what they want to do differently and that all together has I think helped a community and certainly with me just rethink and new ideas. It's been fantastic.
I would say, though, not to pour ice water over all of this hopefulness, there are plenty of people who do not get better as they get older. There
This
are
is true.
people who get to a certain point and then decide that their idiosyncrasies or like technical failures should be highlighted into what makes them special. I'm
Aha.
not going to mention any names here, but you all can like fill in the blanks for yourself, right?
Right, right.
Whether it's like, I don't know, scooping, straight toning, like overly vibrato, like there are all kinds of people who like embrace technical faults as part of their like own personal like
Artistry.
artistry. And I mean, that irritates me as well. So, like
Well, I think if
let's all
any of
get
us,
better without embracing our faults too much,
that's
right?
true. It's true. If any of us ever get to some point where we're like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to learn anything more. I don't need to work anymore. I don't need to practice anymore. That's a really scary thought. You know what I mean? It's like,
The,
yeah,
the people ask me to like make quotes for Instagram, sometimes for Welcome to Boot Camp, and
yeah,
it's really the hardest thing for me because I always want to get things really right, right? So like to write an essay for the website about legato like takes me forever because I really want to get it right. So you ask me to write one quote for Instagram, and I'm
right.
really like awake for 3 days. But one of the quotes that we came up with in the end was, the fact that you are human and not perfect is not a reason to be lazy,
Amen.
right?
That's exactly.
You don't go and like suck one night in a performance and be all, well, I was just human. I was so human on that stage. You're like, well, yeah, I'm human. I did not have a good performance. I'm going to work hard. I'm not going to chastise myself for it, but I
Right, right, right.
so it's a fine balance. It's a fine balance, humanity.
Lucy Tucker Yates has said, "You guys have made better than the best of it, and everyone has been helped." That's very, very kind. Oh, and
Oh,
she says that she's been in love with you for a long time, but when I mentioned the word code, now she's in.
Lucy,
And
what?
Jay, hmm?
Type Lucy. Ask Lucy to type. She's the Nutella to my what? She made
Oh,
it. I am the Lucy. If you're still there, please type and tell Weston.
you're
She
the
made.
Nutella to
I'm the
her.
Nutella to her. I don't know.
That
So,
sounds like an incredible recipe for deliciousness. JJ Penna also says hi.
hi,
And
JJ.
JJ, you better be ready. You're up next week. I can't wait to
Oh my
talk
God, I
again.
can't wait to see all the people. I'm in such good company this month
Well,
because
I just tried to think of the people who, and of course I'm leaving out everybody. And I was like, I could do, a year of just like coaches and pianists and, you
and you
know,
can. You
yeah. And I will. And I will. Okay. You, Lucy is the Nutella to Rochelle's Rotella. And
can.
yes, we are delicious.
That's right. I forgot. I was like, this is really my brain. I cannot even remember the great rhyme that Lucy made. So Rotella is the book that I told you. She's the Nutella to my Rotella. There you go.
There you go. There you go.
So many good friends. It's so nice of them all to check in and
I
watch.
know, I know. That's what I think, thank God to, I mean, well, And it is funny because there has been Skype and FaceTime and Google Duo and Facebook Messenger video. Those have existed for so long, but now for some reason it's like,
We didn't have time.
yeah, exactly. You had everything else going on and you didn't have the time to sit down and say, "Oh, hi, how are you? What's going on?" You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's her epic sports psych stuff. That's what Lucy
It
said.
is, that book is literally, if you, I know there are people listening being like, oh, I'm not the self-help type. Neither am I. I mean, do I look like the self-help type? I am so not the self-help type. But that book is magnificent. Has been a dream in the past year for me to actually track him down. But it's hard to talk to people like that because while they're really good, you as a musician can apply those philosophies, right, to singing. It's going to be hard for him to do that because he doesn't know anything about music, right? So I would like to think, Mr. Rotella, if you ever do a search and my name comes up, I preach in your name all day long, and I try to do my very best to bring to my field what it does, and I also invite other performance psychologists into my world often because I think it's underused research for us.
Well, Lucy has put a Amazon link for the book in the chat, so thank you for that. I'm definitely going to buy that right now, so that's great.
Yeah, and first for your golf because
firstly we got to prioritize here.
Absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. It was so great to see you and to chat with you. And like I said, we need to set something up because I definitely want to work with you. And
okay, I'm telling you, if I come your way in May, we'll set up a time. You'll be vaccinated. I'll be vaccinated. We'll record something live together, right?
Yes.
You pick it. I'll play it. You sing it.
Okay.
And we'll put it here on Facebook for the people.
Oh yeah, we could even do a Facebook Live. It'll be perfect. It'll be amazing.
Facebook Live with us having bourbon.
Yes, of course.
While we're performing, this would be perfect.
Yes, right? This is how they used to do it, or in my mind, that's how they used to do it.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you for everyone who's tuned in. To say that you might have learned something today is an understatement of the world. So, Rachelle, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, my friend. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Absolutely.
And wait, Derek Goff says something with a lot of notes. Cortigiani?
Oh, yes. Oh, also, now that Derek is typing, maybe I should just clarify because I was my partner, Derek Goff. Derek is my business partner and very good friend, just in case somebody is there.
Not a romantic lover.
Not my romantic.
No.
Derek, I thought I would clarify because you're probably being there oh, your partner, Derek. People are thinking the wrong things right now.
It's always good to clarify.
The best business partner anyone can ever want and fantastic coach. Next year, he'll be on your program.
Great. All right, sweetheart. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a wonderful weekend. Mwah.
Bye,
Great
everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone.